Welcome to week 8. Jacob Sanderson, Hayden Winks here. We're going to go over all of the pickups, and this is kind of a unique week where there's not that many injuries. We're just hearing of this Mike Evans one as we sit here about at halftime on Monday Night Football. Kendre Miller, torn ACL, he's going to be out. So I think we'll start with some of the obvious guys that have been popping off, Jaxson Dart, Oronde Gadsden, those types. And then towards the end of the show, we'll kind of just do like a rapid fire, deep league. Who's the RB2s on a bunch of these like bad teams? Because we got trade deadline coming up. You just never know. There's going to be depth chart changes as we head over to the Halloween and Thanksgiving section. So let's start this off with just the guy that's scoring the most fantasy points over the last month, Jaxson Dart. He's the quarterback for this month. Keep in mind, he's faced the Chargers defense, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Denver Broncos on the road without Malik Neighbors. So extremely impressive, at least for fantasy purposes. We could argue about how he's gotten those fantasy points, but what have you seen from Jaxson Dart in the pros, and how close does that resemble to, you know, the college profile that we had with him?
Yeah, I mean, it's been over and above what we could have reasonably expected. I think the positives from the college profile, you're seeing it all show up. It's aggressiveness. It's rushing ability. It's just proclivity to take off and run. All that stuff is awesome. And then the negatives really was, what would he look like in an NFL offense? Because the Ole Miss offense is super gimmicky. I think he's looked better than expected, and I think Dable's done a better job than most in terms of focusing his scheme on what Dart can already do well. So I think you've seen a marriage of those two things. And the other, quality really that I didn't like from Dart's college film is occasional reckless decision making. That's fine. That we're playing fantasy football. I don't care.
Not our problem.
And then also like running himself into injuries. And that is a problem, but it's not a problem until it's a problem. So you can start him, I think, for the time being. Absolutely.
Yeah. Top 10, top 12 kind of rest of the season. I think he's like a low end guy just because, I think there's enough just rushing production here. Just looking at it just this month, he has 9 more carries than any other quarterback. Obviously we have Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen on bye and injuries, but 44.5 rushing yards per game is a ton, the most at the position. I agree with you on the aggressive thrower. This is why I really liked him as a prospect, just because if he hits, you have like a very, very awesome profile. And for fantasy purposes, it's even better because he does all the cheat code stuff that he talked about. Just one piece of data, according to PFF, they chart first reads versus second reads versus all that type of stuff. And if you remove all of his first read targets and you're only judging off of his second read, third read, yada, 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 second best in first downs per play. Really impressive stuff. You see that his eyes are always up. He will either bail and scramble, or he's going to keep his eyes downfield to give his guys a shot. That's how he got a couple of these downfield broken play touchdowns here too. So all fun stuff for fantasy purposes. I think that you guys should be picking up. He's only 42% rostered. I think there's a lot of like statue quarterbacks, more like the Trevor Lawrence tier. You got to drop those guys for Jaxson Dart. The sample size is way too big here, and hopefully we continue to see Brian Daboll either get like somebody like Darius Slayton back in the lineup, or there's another couple wrinkles here as we get more familiar in that offense. But with you, very impressive start for Jaxson Dart without Malik Neighbors. Oronde Gadsden, another rookie here. This one's a really fun one. We've talked about him on this program before, but since then it's just gone all the way to the moon. So this last week, I believe it was like the 3rd or 4th most receiving yards by a rookie tight end in a single game ever. Like maybe the most since Mike Ditka, if you guys have ever heard of him. But yeah, Oronde Gadsden, what have you seen from this last week? Anything different about the Oronde Gadsden profile? Like on a scale from like Darren Waller to, I don't know, like any of these tight end busts that we've had in this very same profile, how much of a believer are you?
I watched, of course, very closely yesterday. He was against my Indianapolis Colts, your Indianapolis Colts, the NFL's leading Indianapolis Colts.
They're so good.
What we're not good at is covering tight ends, but Oronde Gadsden was absolutely ridiculous. The huge play that he had, he had several of them, but the most notable for sure is he's lined up one-on-one with Nick Cross, who's like one of the few playable players in our secondary, and draws a holding penalty on a stick nod route, still gets open anyway, catches it, creates like 30 yards of yak after the catch. You mentioned Darren Waller. That was immediately the name that comes to mind when I watch him, just in terms of how smooth he is. He legitimately does move like a wide receiver. And the most encouraging thing for fantasy is similar to some of the discussions we've had with Harold Fannin. Like, I really loved him as a prospect, as a fun guy. The thing that was hard for me to envision is like, how does this profile ever become an every down fantasy tight end instead of like a 40% snap rate seam stretcher guy? And The answer is they don't care. The Chargers had 76 total plays run in this game. They had 76 total tight end snaps. So that's basically they were playing in exactly 11 on every play. I think there was a couple 10, a couple 12. Oronde Gadsden played 60 of those. So essentially on almost every single snap, they're coming out in 11, and he is their 11 personnel tight end. Now, this is a crazy game. They got down 20 almost immediately, and they're chasing in pass script for the entire game. They didn't even try to run the ball, basically. But still, this is a sign that they're willing to play him as their real boy tight end. They're willing to sacrifice whatever losses they might have in blocking to get the versatility that he brings, the juice in their passing game that they can't get from a Will Dissly, who had a really hilarious drop in this game, by the way. So for me, it's wheels up. It's a high pass rate team. It's a super exciting prospect. It's a big play tight end. I think he's probably certainly in the tight end one conversation rest of the season.
Yeah, you got to pick him up right now. And for like dynasty purposes, I somehow drafted him in the 4th round, and I'm just like windmill dunking this one. And I'm very, very optimistic here. He is just the benefit of the Chargers looking like this air raid college offense. Like you see them, they're always in shotgun. They line up Oronde Gadsden in the slot, and a lot of his production was from the slot. And he's running downfield routes. Like this is not check and release BS stuff. Like a lot of the stuff is just like big seam routes. And guess what? A lot of tight ends have like the juice to actually run the seam. Very few quarterbacks are actually on top of that going to give these guys chances. And there was a bunch of hole shots in this one down the seam on the sideline. And that's just the benefit of playing with Justin Herbert. So obviously there's going to be some dud weeks just because they're going to have some leads and they're going to run the ball more. There's 3 guys that throw the football to, but like you said, this has been for the entire season, the most pass heavy offense in the league, if not number 1, number 2. And I think he's got real juice here. So there's like one of these like intriguing profiles where the hit rate is typically low, but once you start seeing signs, he has like the chance to like really, really pop off. So I think we have to be aggressive here. And there's too many tight ends that have no ceiling around him. And you just got to flip the switch and just see if this Oronde Gadsden stuff can turn into something real.
Yeah, I mean, probably the only examples of this like archetype that you can think of ever truly hitting like the absolute maximum ceiling in terms of just being used this often is like Waller in Vegas. And you could argue because he's bigger, but Jimmy Graham. But like this is, like remember like all the years of Jared Cook where it's like, oh, we really want a team to just use Jared Cook like this. This is that same profile, but they're actually using it like this. It's not just, it's way different than like a Fannin or a Kincaid that I think are a little bit more kind of intermediate guys. Like this is a legitimate field stretcher. Like if anything, and we saw this game, right? He was kind of running more of the Quentin Johnston route tree in this offense than the Ladd McConkey or Keenan Allen route tree in this offense. It's a really, really interesting dynamic that they have on offer. And I mean, I would do the same thing the Chargers are doing. Their running back is Kamani Vidal, and they have like 9th string tackles. You're not establishing shit. So you may as well just let Justin Herbert cook at this point, and that's what they're doing.
And he's 243 pounds at the combine too, which is light, but it's not like outlier light. There's like some like, I mean, what was Evan Ingram in coming out was like in the 230s. So he's a little bit bigger than that. And he had 2 separate 900 plus yard receiving seasons in college. You just like do not see that from tight ends very often. So both
one of those was off a torn ACL, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. The last year. It's incredible stuff. So I'm buying in. The Chargers just feel like this air raid offense, and they can use somebody just like him. And I think they continue to use him.
He didn't run at the combine though, which means the weight's not real. So he actually is not playing at 243.
But he runs like a guy that weighs like 230. So we'll take
because he does. That's what he's playing.
For sure. Okay, let's go do some wide receivers here. Xavier Legette, we had Jalen Coker back. They kept him in this like slot role here, which makes sense his first game back. He goes absolutely nuts. I think there's 2 reasons why Xavier Legette goes nuts. Number 1, Sauce Gardner was on Tedero and McMillan, and Sauce Gardner has been shadowing wide receiver 1s this year. So that's just something to remember when you're facing the Jets. Look at the secondary wide receivers. And on top of it, he ran 8 routes with Andy Dalton. He got 4 passes from him, including his 2 biggest plays. So Andy Dalton's going to be the Panthers starter for the next week or so, 2 to 4 weeks. Sometimes high ankle sprains could be 6+ weeks, as we've seen with other quarterbacks in the league. So Xavier Legette, if he's going to be in 2 wide receiver sets, and Andy Dalton's going to be out there, this is deep league stuff. I think for starting potential, there is some upside though, just because he's a young player. And the offense looks at least respectable this year versus this last year. So what have you seen from Xavier Legette?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to need a lot more than one game to buy into the Xavier Legette-essence. Not only did you have the Sauce Gardner situation on Tet McMillan, but Michael Carter, who's the cornerback 2 for them, was out. So he's going against kind of backup corners while Tet is going against one of the best corners in the league. But yeah, there is some established trust, I suppose, dating back to last year with Andy Dalton. That's of note for sure. He is running all the routes, and I'm sure that's not an immediate jeopardy after the really strong performance. So that stuff's good. I think overall, Andy Dalton is, I don't know if he's like an upgrade for the team and that much at this point, but he's definitely, I think, an upgrade for wide receiver production. So it's super deep league, like 14-team league, or if you're like FFPC or something for a bench ad, bye week issues, he's like totally startable. He's going to be out there. I'm not really buying into he's turned a corner yet. I'm going to need to see another week on that.
Yeah, he'll be in the top 50s for me, but he's not going to be in the top 36 for me. And he's a bench stash in a deeper league. Can I interest you in a Darnell Mooney coming off a decent game where there could have been even more production? He was one of these air yards guys, if you're looking at that stuff. Drew a defensive pass interference. Last year, he was a top 36 guy for a lot of that season. The Falcons' offense is totally different right now, but Darnell Mooney, I believe, just looked healthier this time than earlier in the season when he was coming off of those injuries. So is there any optimism for Darnell Mooney? I'm guessing we would both rather have him versus Xavier Legette.
I'd rather have him than Legette. There's just a longer history of him being a legitimate target-earning player in the NFL. My concerns with Mooney, and I'm overweight on him for best ball. I liked him coming into the year. My issues with him looking at the situation now is, one, they're a lot more run heavy than I thought they would be, partially because their defense is just better, and partially because it's just the offensive identity they want to have. And then the other issue is Kyle Pitts. Like, coming into the season, I would have projected Pitts as really a part-time player. That's what he was last year, receiving specialist tight end. He's improved his blocking in a big way, and props to him for doing that. But now that means they have a target earner at tight end on the field all the time, versus Mooney was running a decent complement of early down routes last year with like Charlie Warner at tight end, who's a complete nothing burger. And that means it's just him and London and the running backs. So I don't think you can get back to where he was last year from a projection standpoint, just because the target competition is higher by virtue of Pitts being a legitimate factor in the offense now. But I think he could definitely still be like a wide receiver 4 and a guy you're totally fine to fire up in a bye week.
There's a couple of weeks upcoming where there's going to be like 4 teams on bye. And at that point, he might end up sneaking into my like 36 wide receiver. Totally so I do think that he's a better play than Xavier Legette, and he would be my preferred pickup. Also, Michael Penix just is not hitting that ceiling that you can at least envision with a second year quarterback. There was a big out route / corner route to Darnell Mooney where the ball, was literally put into the first row, and he was wide open too. So you're going to have some aggressiveness from Michael Penix, but the ball kind of sprays here. He's definitely better in best ball than in redraft, but there's only so many wide receivers we can kind of talk about. For the Mike Evans situation, because we've talked about this because these guys have been injured the entire year. Sterling Shepard, Tej Johnson, Cameron Johnson, we don't have the full data yet, so Josh and I will definitely cover this in depth on stats versus film, but long story short, Sterling Shepard if you have to, but it's like K-Dot and the ball goes to the running backs. Bucky Irving's going to come back here. We don't know if Chris Godwin's going to come back like this next week or if it's going to be multiple weeks. There's not a lot of certainty here, and Baker Mayfield's regressing a little bit too. So like, is there anybody on the waiver wire that you have interest now, assuming that Mike Evans is going to be out for a long stretch of time now?
Yeah, Tez, I guess, is still the most interesting to me because I think he's the downfield guy. He has, as we're talking literally right now, he has got 4 targets tonight for 2 for 23. I think 3 of those targets have all come since Evans have left the game. So it seems like the guy who's probably going to have a lot of that downfield role. Buka is going to have to be the primary wide receiver. I would expect to see more of Shepard working in an underneath slot role. So that would be the guy if I had to pick one, but I would not be that jacked about putting him into my lineup by any stretch. So he'd be the dude, but I like Mooney more. I'm trying to think if I like him or Legette more. I probably actually still like Tez more just because I would rather be attached to Baker than the Panthers who want to run it 35 times a game.
Yes, and that's exactly what they'll do. Last one before we get all to these running backs.
He just caught a 22-yard touchdown as I was in the middle of that discussion. So.
Well, let's move him all the way up. I would go 100%
Yeah.
fab budget with Theo Johnson. So, okay, agree
so he's
there
at
on Theo Johnson.
345-1, and I think all of that is post-Evans injury, at least 2 of those catches. So we're seeing some beneficiary there.
And we're going to get some crazy games here because the Lions are playing ahead here. So there's going to be some wild numbers incoming. Before we get to like some truly disgusting names at running back, one last one, Theo Johnson. I mean, his touchdown was literally not even supposed to go to him, but credit to him, caught the ball and ran down the field. This month, he's a tight end 10 in usage, tight end 9 in fantasy points per game. A lot of it kind of feels fluky to me, but is there any like Theo Johnson buzz? Is it more just kind of if you have a bye week streamer type in decent matchups, is that where we're at?
Definitely, that's where we're at. I mean, it's crazy how much of their production is going to the 2 tight ends because we didn't even talk about Danny Bellinger, who had just as big of a game and had another big game earlier in the year. So, yeah, they're consolidating a lot of the volume because the wide receivers stink. So it's going to be really random, I think, who pops off on a week-to-week basis for the New York Giants because they just have a bunch of kind of replacement level guys hanging out there. But bye week filler, top 15 to 20 guy, totally Theo Johnson.
Daniel Bellinger also dropped maybe Jaxson Dart's best throw of the entire game into the corner of the end zone, so that was pretty unfortunate there. All right, plug your ears, everybody. Log off, go outside, do some push-ups because we're about to talk about some disgusting running backs here. Let's do biggest box scores. Let's start there. Bam Knight started the game for the Arizona Cardinals, played most of the game. The Cardinals are on a bye. They're going to get Kyler Murray back at quarterback, and we can argue if that's a good or bad thing for all these fantasy players. But Bam Knight, when he does come back, there's going to be another week or two at least before Trey Benson appears. So anything that we learned from Bam Knight versus 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, so I guess maybe slightly encouraging, slightly discouraging. I'll start with the encouraging first. He asserted himself over Michael Carter more as the early down back.
Yep.
We saw that trend kind of start in the second half against the Colts, and that continued. The slightly negative thing is that they have remade this a 3-man backfield. They got Dearness Johnston, who was with Petzing all the way back in Cleveland, to come in and be a third down back. He had been a third down back for Petzing before in Cleveland. Actually, because I'm a complete sicko, had tweeted this out like 3 weeks ago when he was out there that like, hey, they should bring this guy back to their practice squad because coaches just have a total fetish for their old running backs. So he's kind of now playing the DeMarcado role. But I guess they don't want to phase out Carter entirely. So Carter was playing in the 2-minute drill, and he was also playing on about 30 to 40% of their early down snaps, which just leaves this thing a complete mess. So if you have to start one, it's Knight. He's probably the best bet for a touchdown. He's probably the best bet to lead them in carries. But like, if you don't get a touchdown, he's losing passing down work to 2 other running backs. He's also losing early down carries, and he's likely to be the running back at the goal line, but it's not like you'd be that shocked if it just happened to be Michael Carter. So it's pretty gross. And
he's on a bye. So I told you guys this was going to be disgusting. That was the top guy on my list. All right, this one I think is actually the better play. Kyle Monangai. I watched that Bears game, and it was encouraging because the Bears defense showed up, and the offensive line is actually moving people. So DeAndre Swift had another great game, but this is starting to look a little bit more Lions-esque and a bunch of outside zone, but a lot of fun wrinkles scheme-wise. And then Kyle Monangai, more of a David Montgomery. Now, obviously, everyone knows the Lions average 30 points per game. The Bears are down at 22 or whatever it is. So we can't copy-paste this, but for a day 3 rookie, Kyle Monangai is starting to make some plays here. So any level of optimism, I'm sure that we'd like Kyle Monangai's upside case a lot more than the Bam Knight at this point.
Yeah, we would. I think so, especially late season. I love what they're doing in the run game. I love how they're using DeAndre Swift right now. They're using him in a way that makes sense. Darnell Wright is just like one of my favorite players to watch on a weekly basis. It's their big right tackle. And he's just mauls dudes on
way down the field too.
Like, watching him on screens. Woo! Like if you get him on a screen pass or you get him on like pin and pull or like anything that gets him crack toss, anything that gets him going down the field, he's just an absolute mauler. He is looking for work. He's looking for dudes to push 6 feet underground. One of the most fun linemen to watch in the league. And they have kind of made him the star of their run game is what's happening when I'm watching it. They're either using him to set the edge and then bring the guards around and they have a cavalry, or they're using him as the arch blocker out from the right tackle position to just go and chase dudes down. And Swift, super athletic. You get him behind big 58, good things are going to happen. That's allowed for Monangai to come in there. I'll temper the upside case a little bit. They've actually started playing Roschon Johnson a little bit on offense.
Yeah.
I don't think it affects Monangai now, but what I would say is if Swift were to go down at some point, I bet that Johnson plays most of the passing down stuff because he's done that a lot before, and they keep it as a split. So Monangai would be an RB2. I just don't think he would be like top 5 ceiling type of guy where he's going to get a 90% workload. But yeah, really, really fun. I don't know if Caleb has necessarily looked that great recently, but the offense has, and especially the run game has, and that's going to be huge for Swift and for Monangai potentially.
Yeah, at least with the Bears in general, the defense has now showed up, the ground game has now showed up, and I think it's a lot of it's scheme offensive line wise. And then Caleb, I thought the first month of the year was very good. The last couple of games not nearly as good, but if we can start putting all this stuff together coming out of the bye, and I think it's a very well coached team, obviously, but we're starting to see that with the DeAndre Swift usage and all the blocks that you're talking about. So Monangai has 13.5 expected fantasy points this last game. They were super run heavy. So I do think when there's 4-6 teams on bye and you're looking for a flex play, you guys are going to be hitting us up on Sunday morning, Kyle Monangai, or like the world's worst wide receiver option. I'm going to tell you to start Kyle Monangai. So that's where we're at.
His role is like, it's very similar to the rest in peace Kendre Miller role, but just in like a way more fun offense for that kind of role.
Yep. Completely agree there. All right. This is just really kind of planning for the future here. Isaiah Davis, Jets running back 2. Breece Hall had like a very slight ankle tweak, came back and, he had an okay game. He had like one of the worst pass protection reps I've ever seen. And he wants to get traded. They've talked about him being in trade talks going all the way back to June or whatever. So there's 2 ways Isaiah Davis could kind of blossom if Breece Hall picks up an injury or if they actually trade him. So my question to you is it's going to be obvious. If Breece Hall gets out of there, everyone's going to be picking up Isaiah Davis. What do you know about Isaiah Davis, the actual player? What kind of role would he have if Breece Hall does leave New York?
I think a really good one. I liked him coming out of college, and not necessarily in the sense of like this is a game breaker, but in the sense of like this is a very fantasy friendly profile. He handled a shit ton of volume in college, and he can pass block and he can catch passes. And they don't have anyone with Braylon Allen on IR at this point. Really else on the roster. Who is their RB3 right now? I actually don't. I literally don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So like he has the profile where in this exact kind of situation where things have not really gone according to the team's plans, if Breece were to get traded, if he were to get hurt, then why can't Isaiah Davis have a 90% snap rate? He's like the exact kind of running back that can. Big pass catching workload. So I like him. I think he's totally fine. Shown enough juice. And I don't know if Fields is going to he got benched in game. I don't know if he's going to start this week or not. At some point, Tyrod Taylor is going to be the starter. Yeah. And at the very least, I think he's going to chuck a couple more passes per game to running backs probably than Justin Fields is. So he could be an RB2 late season. And, who knows? They haven't practiced this week. Maybe Breece Hall is actually hurt with this ankle. So.
Yep. Yeah, I think that like injured kind of in quotes part for down the stretch would not surprise me. We're talking about a player going to be a free agent here. And obviously there's nothing to play for on this Jets team at all. So yeah, he's got size. And he was a bell cow in college. And like, that's all you can kind of ask for at this point. Bashal Tutin has now dropped under the 50th kind of percent threshold that we use on this show. He hasn't done a whole lot, but nothing's really changed. And I feel like I just still like his upside a whole lot more than a lot of these RB2s on teams. So anything on the Jacksonville RB2 role?
No, it's been status quo. I mean, they've been using Etienne as the clear RB1. They use Tutin as the clear RB2, and then LaQuint Allen as the pass catching guy. I mean, I constantly get comments where people are like, oh, is Tutin behind Allen now? And I think that's maybe why he's dropping. That's not really the case. Allen just has a specific carved out role as a pass protector, pass catcher back. And it hurts, the ultimate contingent upside of Tutin. It hurts Etienne right now. But if Etienne were to go down, I think Tutin would subsume basically the entirety of Etienne's current role. Allen would stay in his role and maybe get a few extra change of pace snaps that are basically equal to what Tutin has now.
Yep, completely agree there. Maybe one with a little bit more newsworthiness. Devin Neal, Saints, I guess, number 2 running back at this point. Kendrick Miller torn ACL. Alvin Kamara, I mean, all morning I was just looking at advanced running back numbers just to kind of see where we're at through 6 or 7 games, and he's bottom 10 in like every single one that I can pull up. Now the offensive line's also dealing with a bunch of injuries, and there were just more bad news on the Saints front. But Devin Neal, he was the third running back for New Orleans. Now he's number 2, and Alvin Kamara said that he would rather go drink than be traded. So we don't know how this one's going to end up, but the Saints are ripe for just really weird depth charts in December. So what do you know about Devin Neal, and do you think that he's for sure the number 2 now?
Devin Neal, similar profile to what I kind of just said about Isaiah Davis to me. He got more publicity during the draft process, so I guess I was lower on him relative to consensus, but he strikes me as a long-term backup running back who can do everything at an adequate level, where if circumstances happen around him where there's a reason for him to be the starter, he's not clearly capped out of any part of the role. He can stay on the field in passing situations and be fine. He can handle 18 to 20 carries a game and be totally fine. So I think he's an interesting guy to bet on, especially from a dynasty perspective. Alvin Kamara is already talking about sipping pina coladas. So you got to wonder if retirement is in play for his offseason. Who knows? And Kendre Miller is now going to be coming off an ACL. They could draft somebody, but they could also not. He becomes an interesting name here.
Yeah, Devin Neal had 3 straight seasons at Kansas with over 1,000 rushing yards and 20 receptions. So he kind of has this well-rounded profile. I thought he was a very mature runner without the athletic and size profile of the top 20 running backs in the NFL. But in a pinch, could he just understand the playbook and pick up the yards that are given for him? I do think he's a pretty safe, very high floor running back, given that he went in the 6th round there. So maybe an interesting name. Brashard Smith, definitely more newsworthy in general. Garbage time hero, but also the 2-minute drill. And just there's starting to become some Jerick McKinnon stuff. And I mean that in 2 different ways. One, the role is escalating. But 2, the Chiefs are actually scoring enough fantasy points where Jerick McKinnon, when he was fantasy viable, that's when they were actually scoring 30 points per game, not the 22 that we've been used to for the last couple of years. So Brashard Smith, tell us about the profile and the Kareem Hunt injury as well. It didn't seem like it's that major, but ankle sprains, you just never know. So Brashard Smith, hit me.
Yeah, I mean, Smith, super fun prospect. I mean, the kind of guy that nerds and fantasy Twitter are going to love. Converted wide receiver, comes into running back, handles a pseudo workhorse role as last year in college. And then the stuff that he gets, I mean, it's right out of the old, they dusted off the McKinnon plays and they brought them back. I mean, they continue to run that delayed angle route screen for him. They've been finding other creative ways to get him. He got a passing game touch inside the 10-yard line this week. We saw that with McKinnon a lot in his prime, where he was, of course, not like the green zone back if they wanted to line up and run it from the 2-yard line, but they had a lot of fun packages for first read running back targets inside the 10, and McKinnon would be on the field for those. And so Smith could potentially get some of that as well. And you mentioned Kareem Hunt. So he suffers what honestly looked like a serious injury in the moment that it happened. And then he does come back in the game, but I don't think he got any touches in the second half. And, we've seen it several times with ankles. Like, you guys can play on adrenaline, and then all of a sudden you wake up 2 days later, your ankle's swollen and you can't get it in your shoe and you're not playing for 3 weeks. So I don't take it as a given that Kareem Hunt is going to play this week at all. I also think Kareem Hunt his roles declined. I mean, we saw Pacheco kind of work from what was like a 40% snap rate into no one's really a workhorse running back for the Chiefs because they don't run the ball, but he was getting closer to that in recent weeks. So I think you're in good shape for Smith to have a more meaningful role. All of the passing game work that he got this week was not really, I mean, maybe you could argue it was garbage time at the end of the first quarter, but all of his passing game work was while Patrick Mahomes was in the game. 11 of the 14 carries were with Gardner Minshew, but he was already at 10 PPR points before Minshew came into the game. So it's not like it was completely fake. Yeah,
this is full PPR, just waiver wire material here. Do you like the call a lot? And if you were just running the Chiefs, you would just obviously put Pacheco on early downs and then Brashard Smith as the pass down back and keep it moving. Like, there's just no need for the Kareem Hunt stuff. So
there's no need for the Kareem Hunt stuff.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's going to do it. Luckily not too many crazy injuries this week. So that means the waiver wire is extra dry this week, but found some new names to hit on there. And hopefully there's not too many injuries for the rest of the way here as we head into like the actual peak of bye weeks. So what do you got over on Thinking About Thinking, and then The Athletic and your Twitter and everything else you got?
Yeah, I mean, you named it. So that's vast majority of my writing's up on Thinking About Thinking. We'll have the Sunday drive out basically like it always is, Tuesday morning, which might be now if you're watching this on Tuesday. We'll have the Stock Watch on Saturday. We'll have Dynasty rankings updates. We'll have Beyond Dynasty points, all that good stuff throughout the week. And we'll see you all back here on Monday. And you might already know the result of this game before it ends, but go Blue Jays.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. Representing Canada, of course. Okay.
Of course. Yeah.
Download Underdog, promo code the show. There's so much stuff that we got on there. It's like hard to even keep track. Tons of bonuses and special offers. I think it's play 5, get 100 right now. So use promo code the show. Team picks, player projections, all that fun stuff. So we'll see you guys over on Stats versus Film tomorrow.